With 3 visits through Traverse Town under our belt, our 4th and official final visit is probably our shortest yet, and one that bleeds directly from the ending of Hollow Bastion. For many, this visit really only contains a single piece of story that we'll need to go through before jumping right back into the action. However, upon closer inspection, especially through the lens that we've been inspecting this entire game through, this visit can actually help us fully understand what this world truly is. A world that, within the grandiose lore of Kingdom Hearts, is a mash of former and lost worlds that cater to the people who reside within it, and a world that perfectly mirrors the complex stories and mythologies that make up its districts. But with nearly every bit of this world explored by this point, you'd think there wouldn't be anything left. Thankfully, there's still just a bit left here in Traverse Town that helps us connect the mythology of this world to every other in our journey. So, without further ado, let's discuss Traverse Town and its mythology in our... After narrowly escaping the encroaching darkness of Hollow Bastion's keyhole, we find ourselves back in Traverse Town, filling in Leon and the gang on everything that's happened in our journey, where Leon states that the keyhole that was opened thanks to the hearts of the Princesses of Light is a result of the dark keyblade that Ansem Riku wielded, which always had me questioning why Hollow Bastion wasn't destroyed like Destiny Islands. When we lost Destiny Islands at the beginning of the game, we would come to find that the heart of the world was exposed when the door officially opened, which resulted in Sora's home being destroyed. With this knowledge, it more than likely means that the keyhole that was opened back in Hollow Bastion, thanks to the shrouded hearts of the princesses, was not Hollow Bastion's true keyhole, but one that's connected to the realm of everlasting darkness, with Aerith even stating that more and more Heartless are emerging throughout the worlds. After speaking with the Final Fantasy gang, if we try to leave to go back to Hollow Bastion, we'll find that no path is actually available to us, meaning that we'll need to find a new path to make it back to seal the keyhole that we helped create. With that said, if you haven't completed most of the side quests up to this point, this is probably the best time to do them. Though it won't be as easy as before, because if you remember what I had said back in Hollow Bastion, if we go past this point, every Heartless will become its highest leveled variant. And if you hadn't collected every puppy, torn page, or special item, now is absolutely the time to do it. So yeah, doing the remaining available side quests at this point is going to be a bit more challenging. So maybe staying here in Traverse Town is our best option for now. But stepping back into Traverse Town's first district, there's something here that stands out more than anything else that we've seen throughout our journey. And it's something that's been in our face since the very beginning. That being the Fleur De Lis. Whether you pronounce it with or without the S, the Fleur De Lis is a symbol that you've more than likely seen in your everyday, be it as a fence post, on flags, or even as the official icon for the New Orleans Saints. It's a symbol that nowadays is so commonplace that many don't think twice about, and is one that many don't realize has an ancient and mythological past. Dating as far back as the 8th or 7th century BCE, the creation of the Fleur De Lis as an ornamental piece is tied to the creature known as Kalulu. If you remember the Kalulu from our time in Atlantica, this fish-human hybrid was a spawn of Tiamat, the primordial sea goddess in Mesopotamian belief, who represented the ancient wisdom that would be shared with humanity. As for the depiction of the Fleur De Lis atop their head, this was likely inspired by the lilies and irises native to the region, that being Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, which, when bloomed in the early summer months, represented the purity and divinity of the season, standing opposite to the winter months, which represented death and loss in both a physical and a spiritual sense. This was in part due to the myths that surrounded the coming of the seasons that predate the Persephone myth, which we explained back during our time in Wonderland. In it, the goddess Inanna is sent to the underworld to meet with her sister Ereshkigal, the goddess of that underworld, whereupon she is captured and is subsequently traded for her husband Dumuzi, with his sister Geshtinana volunteering herself to take her brother's place. Ereshkigal ordained that the two would switch places at opposite ends of the year, thus creating the warm summer months with the return of Geshtinana, the goddess of fertility and agriculture, and the cold winter months with her departure. Through this story that is believed to have appeared 1,000 years prior to the Persephone myth and the lilies and irises that would bloom during the early summer, this more than likely brought about the connection to the divine that created the earliest version of the Fleur De Lis as seen atop the head of the Kalulu. Of course, this wouldn't be the only representation of a hybrid monster or a chimera with that Fleur De Lis, as the creature Urmalulu was another spawn of Tiamat that represented the divine power of the land. This would be furthered by the cap of divinity that they wore, that helmet, which depicted the blooming lily and/or iris atop it. Moreover, chimeras within the ancient world were meant to convey that the union of man and animal was divine by nature, thereby emphasizing their power over their dominions and what they represented as they wore the cap of divinity that depicted that floral design atop it. Over time, the use of the Fleur De Lis would grow through some of the currency of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia, and continued even into the Ptolemaic period of Egypt, where pillar reliefs like those seen at the Temple of Esna would portray the Fleur De Lis design atop them to continue to emphasize the power of the god Khnum, who presided over the life that the Nile brought and the life force of all humanity, continuing the idea that this floral depiction of lilies and/or irises were representative of divine fertility. Unsurprisingly, this symbol of divine fertility would travel across the Mediterranean at the start of the medieval period and spread throughout Europe as various rulers adopted the symbol into their own beliefs, coming to a head during the baptism and crowning of the first Frankish king, Clovis I, at the end of the 4th century CE, where it was believed that an angel, or even potentially the Virgin Mary herself, descended from heaven to present a lily to the newly crowned king, ordaining him as God's chosen to rule over what is now France and Germany. From this point on, the Fleur De Lis would become a notable Christian symbol, as the belief that the lily was created from the tears of Eve, who began to weep when she and Adam were banished from the Garden of Eden, signifying the purity of God's graces through not only this story, but as well through the virgin birth of Jesus by Mary. It's through this that our modern depiction and understanding of the symbol solidified within the French monarchy and the heraldry throughout Europe, with the English and even Albanian kingdoms beginning to adapt the symbol for themselves years later, appearing on coats of arms, seals, paintings, coins, flags, and many other items. The symbol was further associated with Christian kings and queens as a symbol of their divine royalty and divine purity. All of which brings us back to Kingdom Hearts, as the Fleur De Lis is one of the most prominent symbols throughout Traverse Town, and nearly all of the worlds that we've visited thus far, with one of the most important being the Heartless symbol itself, being a play on that Fleur De Lis design, with the heart portion of that symbol representing a heart that is closed off or locked away, as every Heartless contains a shrouded or captured heart, with that bottom portion of that symbol as an inverted Fleur De Lis to emphasize the impurity of these artificial Heartless, much in the same way that we'd view the inverted cross today as a subversion of Christian belief through a demonic presence. Though I should mention that this idea of an inverted cross being representative of demonic power is more of a modern belief, as its original purpose was meant to represent martyrdom within the Christian faith. Also known as the Cross of St. Peter, the story of his death states that he requested to be crucified upside down during the 1st century CE, as he had accepted his death but did not feel that he was worthy of the same death as Jesus had a few decades prior, which I personally feel is a very fitting way to connect Sora's own sacrifice at the end of our first Hollow Bastion visit, which, speaking of, this, along with the Fleur De Lis, was something that I had actually planned on covering during our time in Hollow Bastion, as that world is filled with statues and art depicting that Fleur De Lis design, but ultimately saved it for here, as this is the first world in our journey where we come across both the Fleur De Lis and the Heartless symbol. And as an ancient and deeply religious symbol, it subtly shares with us the constant struggle between the light and the darkness that we'll face in our journey, and that common and everyday people face each and every day. Knowing at this point that we'll need to return to Hollow Bastion to free Riku and the other princesses who remain there, we'll need to find Cid. As being our gummy expert, he'll know exactly how to help us. Thankfully, when we speak to him, he mentions that he had hid away a particular nav gummy in the secret waterway years ago for such an occasion like this, which should be easy enough for us to find. But making our way there, we quickly find out that Aerith and Cid were not kidding when they said that more Heartless were everywhere now, as we'll need to get past wizards, dark balls, and the like. Surprisingly, when we step into the waterway, we find Kairi hanging out here, as this secluded place more than likely reminds her of the secret place she, Sora, Riku, and the other kids often visited on Destiny Islands. When we speak to her, she remarks that the mural seems a bit odd, and rightfully so, for if you remember when we first met Leon and Aerith here during our second visit, the mural depicted a moon, but now shows a sun. Also, I know that Tangled didn't come out for another 8 years after this, but that looks eerily similar to the sun in that movie. Just saying. I mean, it's fitting because we get to explore the Kingdom of Corona as a world in Kingdom Hearts 3. But with getting our new nav gummy and speaking with Kairi again, we actually get a really sweet scene of the two reminiscing about her grandmother's story, where they both acknowledge that even through all of Sora's searching for Kairi, she was with him from the very beginning, begging the question of whether Sora's hallucinations of Kairi all those times really were her peeking through his heart. A heart that was once shrouded in darkness after his sacrifice, but was freed with Kairi's own light, and claiming that the light and the darkness are more than just fairy tales and myths, but real and tangible forces within the world of Kingdom Hearts.
Let's go!
You can't go.
Why not?
Because it's way too dangerous.
Come on, Sora. We made it this far by sticking together. You can't go alone.
Kairi, even if we're apart, we're not alone anymore, right?
I can't help?
You'd kind of be in my way.
Okay. You win. Take this. It's my lucky charm. Be sure to bring it back to me.
Don't worry, I will.
Promise?
Promise.
Don't ever forget. Wherever you go, I'm always with you.
Providing us with her lucky charm, the Wayfinder, and an odd Boston accent, this helps us acquire our new Keyblade, and honestly the best one yet, the Oathkeeper. a weapon that provides additional magic and increased strength, which portrays a twinkling star at its edge, a feature that, as we'll come to see, furthers the mythology behind this weapon. As a keychain made from the seashells on Destiny Islands, the Wayfinder is an interesting piece to add to the story, as wayfinding is seen simply as a person or group orienting themselves within a physical space. For many, using the sun to determine the direction between east and west, even given the seasons or the flow of river water in difficult terrain, could help that person or group find their home or the next step on their journey. However, when wayfinding in the open ocean, this becomes a bit difficult, as orienting yourself in the vast open waters is a bit harder to map out and navigate, as there aren't many discernible landmarks. Nevertheless, this didn't stop the ancient Polynesian navigators, who found that the stars, the moon, and the sun tended to have distinct motions and could use them as the landmarks that they needed to help guide them. At times, even utilizing the wind and current temperature to help guide them to new islands or to their homes. Furthermore, seasoned navigators have been documented creating star maps or star compasses, also known as Kapeu Wateu, which newcomers would memorize and follow when traveling from one island to the next, teaching that some groups of stars could be followed to help determine the cardinal direction that they were traveling, with one group being the Scorpius constellation in the south-southwest night sky, which many Polynesians would refer to as Maui's fishhook, a constellation that tells the story of Maui, the trickster god of Maori mythology, who sailed with his brothers through the Pacific and, with his fishhook, reeled up the Hawaiian Islands as his brothers continued to sail, in a constellation that was still used for wayfinding around the Hawaiian Islands up until its colonization during the 19th century. On top of wayfinding itself being wholly mythological, it was also the way these methods were taught that coincided with the oral traditions that existed throughout the ancient world, as cultures like those of the Egyptians, who used the stars to understand the annual flooding of the Nile, and even the Chinese dynasties, who used the stars and the moon to tell time, were groups who, as well, applied their ancient oral tradition to help in finding their way through their world, and even through time, as oral tradition and teaching are, by and large, the oldest methods for storytelling and understanding our world, instilling the knowledge and beliefs of the past into the generations that continued afterward. Of course, when referring to wayfinding, or more specifically, the Wayfinder itself, a lot of people may point to this specific symbol that has come to be known as the Vegvisir, meaning the pointer of the way. It's been interpreted as a mystical symbol that assisted wayward travelers to, as its original text describes, never lose one's way in storms or bad weather, even when the way is not known. And though this symbol appears to use Old Norse iconography, with parts of the word Vegvisir being derived from Old Norse, it is, in reality, a 19th century symbol that is believed to have been grafted onto Norse myth by Christian mysticism to further the Christianization of Norse mythology some 800 years after the Viking Age. Now, this isn't to say that this Wayfinder is a falsehood of a myth, as its existence still derives from a seemingly credible source of pre-Christian Norse beliefs and traditions. And though speculative, it may have been a symbol that truly helped a person or group of people find their way home through the harsh northern landscapes. But as I had mentioned earlier with the Oathkeeper Keyblade depicting a star at its edge, this, alongside Kyrie's gift, connects us to the stars that many in the past used to help find their way. being either the open ocean wayfinding or a mystical symbol that reflects the stars, both guide us to our destined destination. Whether that way be our own home, towards a new journey, or back to our lost friend, we carry this wayfinder to keep ourselves safe in the harsh darkness that stands before us, knowing full well that with this gift, wherever we go, we will always have the purest light with us. But with gaining the Oathkeeper and our new Nav Gummy, we're now ready to have Cid set up our ship so we can finally face the Heartless back at Hollow Bastion. Returning to Cid, he quickly installs the Nav Gummy and returns, wishing that we didn't have to go through all this danger, which is probably the nicest thing he's ever said, given his history here and throughout Final Fantasy VII. It's nice to know that he cares. But before we officially step off of this world to make our way back to Hollow Bastion, let's take one last look at Traverse Town, as from this point on, we won't really have a need to come back. And considering that fact, I think it's high time we addressed the overall purpose of this world within Kingdom Hearts' story and the mythology that connects it to everything else. Existing wholly differently from the rest of the worlds in Kingdom Hearts, Traverse Town exists as the hub world that we've repeatedly returned to so as to finish notable side quests and acquire new items and gear. More than that, however, Traverse Town's presence within the grander universe is meant to help those who have lost their own world by providing a safe haven, as many of the other denizens you can speak with here will occasionally reference their home worlds and will at times refer to themselves as refugees, which is a substantial thing to note, as we've come to find that Traverse Town appeared at the separation of the worlds due to the Heartless, as a temporary holding place for anyone who became separated from their home world, existing in a manner of speaking as the in-between place for many who are lost or exist in between the realm of light and the realm of darkness. A purgatory of sorts that allows the people to live here for a time until their world is revived and are able to return home. And it's this idea of this world being a temporary stop or a temporary place that sets it apart from the other worlds and connects it to the belief surrounding its purgatorial essence. Primarily seen through the Catholic belief within Christianity, Purgatory exists as a complex process where souls are cleansed from the sins of their mortal bodies before their eventual ascension into heaven. For many Catholics, during the medieval period, they viewed this process as a painful erasure of worldly sin, with the holy flames being used to cleanse and burn the soul. A transformative experience that was meant to shed away the facade that mortal bodies exist through to expose the true self that would enter into heaven. Of course, this sentiment wasn't shared by everyone, as early into the Renaissance, the idea of a fiery purgatory shifted more towards a more pleasant cleansing of the worldly attachments that a person had held while on Earth. Surprisingly, this concept of purgatory as both a place and a process for a soul to pass through temporarily on their way to heaven is surprisingly unique to Catholic belief, as other cults of worship and cultures, like those seen in Egypt, Greece, and even Japan, continued to hold onto not only the items, but the feelings and even social status of the person after their passing. The ancient Egyptians would provide food, finances, and occasionally even their pets to pass alongside the person to join them in the afterlife. The Greeks believed in the fields of asphodel within Hades, where many continued their existence, tending to the fields and land that they now lived in. And even within Shintoism, the dead were said to exist alongside the living to help live their own lives, again exemplifying the uniqueness that the belief in purgatory was within Catholicism. However, it is worth mentioning that many Catholics, then and even still today, pray for the dead to be cleansed during their purgatory, which was a fairly common practice throughout other religions and beliefs surrounding the dead. Zoroastrianism, for example, which stands as the oldest monotheistic religion, was one such that provided prayers and lively chants to assist the dead on their journey to their ancestral paradise. In Hinduism, family and friends would pray for the dead while reciting passages from epics like that of the Ramayana. And even within Buddhism, many would recite the sutras and the mantras to ease the soul as it passed from one life to the next. Which actually brings up a fascinating connection, as many within Buddhism believe in something known as the Bardo, or the intermediate state of existence, where a person temporarily resides after their death on their journey towards rebirth or reincarnation, a state in which the consciousness of that person leaves their former mortal body, and as the Buddha explains it through Theravada, craves for another new life to continue their existence, where the consciousness cycles between the light of life and the dark suffering that exists around it, guiding a person through their karma or the sum of their actions to attain a better rebirth and a stronger spiritual self. Originating from ancient Vedic belief and spreading into East Asian spirituality, the concept and belief surrounding the Bardo grew over time into 6 distinct stages of temporary residence for a person's consciousness, consisting of birth and life, dreaming, meditation, the moment of death, of luminosity, and lastly, rebirth. 6 stages which act in much the same way as the Catholic belief of purgatory, where instead of the soul, it's the consciousness that evolves through the transformative stages to attain higher spirituality and renewed life. Concepts of which that would be connected to and expanded upon in later entries within Kingdom Hearts. But in relation to Sora's journey through Traverse Town, he and the many denizens of it can be thought of as having passed on from their original lives when their world was taken by the Heartless, and as existing here in Traverse Town temporarily until their world is renewed and they are reborn. And as for Traverse Town itself, the world, in a way, exists as an embodiment of the intermediate state of the Bardo, as this world emerged from those whose hearts and consciousness remained when their world was lost, with each completing a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, as this world's purpose is for many to traverse through on their journey back home. From the first time that we entered Traverse Town's warm and vibrant streets to our last look back, Traverse Town has been a beautiful and complex world that not only connects each world we've journeyed through, but also connects it to the many mythologies that make up its 3 districts. It's honestly a shame that this world isn't explored more in the series, save for Dream Drop Distance, as this world has easily become one of my favorites to just run around and learn more about, thanks to this journey. But I think that's actually a good thing, as having stepped through this temporary world, we've come out the other side all the better. And as we step out through the front doors and into the lanes between, we see that a new portal is awaiting us, a new and dangerous path that'll take us back to the Bastion of Darkness, where hollow truths once rang out, and one that opens the door to the unknown. With each visit to Traverse Town having provided more and more for us to explore, it really makes me wonder what else I might have missed during our visits to such an amazing world. If you think there's anything that I may have missed or should look more into, let me know down in the comments. If you'd like to go a step further and to help support the channel by subscribing or even joining our growing community of gamers and historians over on Patreon, like Sarah Smith, Erickson James, Vegar Arnson, Ryan, and Steve, you're making sure that these projects continue. I cannot thank my patrons enough for supporting me, and I cannot thank you enough for watching. As always, links are all in the description, and I'll see you all next time.